In the first 3 days of Holy Week, the Gospels always focus on the imminent betrayal of Jesus. And the person, of course, who comes to the fore these days is Judas Iscariot. Now, Judas was called by Jesus to follow him in the same way that the other apostles were invited. And at a certain point, Jesus chose Judas to be among the 12, those who were closest to him. It's difficult to say whether Jesus knew from the beginning that Judas would betray him. The common thought is that Jesus, in his humanity, did not know how Judas would fall. But at a certain point, it's clear Jesus became aware that something was amiss, and that Judas had given in to the temptation to go his own way for any number of reasons. So while the apostles and Jesus are sitting at the table for the Passover meal, the Last Supper, Jesus reveals what he has come to realize, that one of the 12 would turn against him. And this causes concern, as we heard. So Peter motions to John, the beloved apostle who's leaning against Jesus' side, ask Jesus who this might be. Jesus reveals his betrayer when he takes a morsel of the bread and dips it and hands it to Judas. He also confronts Judas by saying, "Go and do what you have to do." Judas leaves the meal, but no one really seems to understand what is going on. But Jesus also reveals another betrayer at the table. His conversation with Peter indicates that Peter will deny him, deny knowing him. Peter says, "I will never do such a thing." But as we know, he too, like Judas, fell. One of the things that the Gospels really don't address is how Jesus must have felt. Imagine what was going through his mind and his heart about two of his own chosen betraying him and denying him. Again, in his humanity, Jesus must have grieved over this betrayal. Being betrayed by people closest to you is one of the most hurtful things that a person can experience. Having someone you love turn against you is a deep and painful wound. And in most cases, forgiveness does not come easy from those who have been betrayed. For instance, in the case of marital infidelity, that act of betrayal can easily bring down a marriage. But it's important for us to remember as we go through these readings that these acts of betrayal by Judas and then Peter, and in fact by all the apostles who fled, these are not beyond forgiveness. They're not beyond redemption. Because Jesus came into the world as a result of betrayal. Our two parents, our first parents, betrayed their maker. Adam and Eve turned away from God. And that necessitates the coming of the Redeemer. It is Jesus' act of obedience, his refusal to betray God. That is what brings about his death. And God the Father looks upon his Son's faithfulness as a remedy for our own acts of betrayal. So what Judas and Peter have done is really indicative of the reasons why Jesus went through his suffering and death. These events in the final week of Jesus' life remind us about how we ourselves are guilty of betrayal. We betray the Lord through our various sins and selfishness and acts of disobedience. We betray other people by our failure to love. What's the consequence for people who betray?